Okay, so good morning, everybody. As he mentioned, my name is Dan Kraus with Here Maps, based up in Berlin, Germany. It's an immense privilege to be here. I'm just blown away by the amount of energy and by the amount of excitement in the room today. And thanks also to Urban and to everyone at PODIM for this opportunity. Urban actually asked me to kind of, in view of our subject, take kind of a corporate sort of top-down view on things. So I will be the corporate person today. Please don't hold it against me. And in that sense, I'd like to talk about really two different things. The first is the key trends. The trends that we as a large digital mapping company see in the market, the forces that are really shaping the opportunities that are present today. And then secondly, I'd like to change gears a little bit and talk about big companies in general and ways that you as startup companies and as mid-sized companies can actually collaborate with large companies like us at a global scale. So let's start with trends. Boy, there's a lot going on, right? Let's start by pulling the camera back a little bit, though, to what astronomer Carl Sagan called the pale blue dot, and look back in history a little bit. So back in 1968, there were only 3.5 billion people who lived on our planet. Not really that many. At the end of last year, in December of 2015, there were 3.9 billion people who lived just in cities. So an immense amount of growth. Now 7.4 billion people who live on the planet. But it's not just the number of people, and it's not even just where they live, it's where they're moving. Urbanization is accelerating at an incredible rate of speed. As you can see from this graph, in certain parts of the world, like North America, will be adding almost, and Europe will be adding almost 50% to the population of urban centers by 2050. In other areas, specifically in Africa and parts of Asia, that'll more than triple. So urbanization is going at an incredible clip. And actually by 2050, this means that about 70% of the population of the world will actually be living in urban centers. That really changes the dynamics of humanity in a really fundamental way. And it's not just that we're getting closer to each other, we're also talking a whole lot more. I'm sure everyone in this audience is very familiar with the smartphone revolution and all the numbers, so I won't spend any time on that. But we as a digital mapping company do a tremendous amount of business both with the auto industry and also with the smartphone industry, and we're particularly interested at the intersection of those two industries. So we find this statistic really interesting, that since the end of 2014, the number of smartphones being sold on a yearly basis exceeds the number of cars in the entire world. That gives a really interesting impact, an idea of the impact that smartphones and connection are actually having on humanity. That means that most likely there's quite a few million people in the world using smartphones who've never even seen a car. But it's not just the smartphones that are talking, and it's not just the people. It's also the devices. And the Internet of Things, everything is increasingly becoming connected. And it's pretty incredible. If you look at the numbers, there's almost a 50% CAGR between now and the end of 2020 in terms of the number of connected devices that we're going to have. Not even smartphones, just the new class of IoT device. And as a large company, really what we care about, of course, is not just the number of devices, but the amount of revenue that's generated with those devices, right? And that number too is also staggering. Basically, by 2020, we're going to have almost €1 trillion in revenue generated from all of those devices. And what's interesting, and really what I want to focus on today, is that it's not just new businesses and new growth areas, but it's the revolutionizing of existing businesses where that, we feel, may have the greatest impact. So when you roll these things up, we're really talking about sort of an emergent new kind of data ecosystem. I mean, we have these lots of very small new devices, microcomputing. We have vast mobility options. We have watches, we have necklaces, we have bracelets, all different sorts of things that are connected. And we have a rising number of sensors, an incredible number of sensors. They're in everything. They're in your fridge, they're on your dog. There's a sensor for pretty much everything right now because they're very inexpensive. And all of that information is flowing up to the cloud. In many cases, it's coming back down too, and there's whole breakout new technologies like 3D printing that are actually allowing us to create assets that actually come from that sum of knowledge. But from a human perspective, at the end of the day, what this means is that we have an unbelievable amount of information now being captured and also delivered back to our fingertips. An amount of information that even a couple of years ago would have been completely unimaginable. So every time you turn a corner, data is captured. Every time you get a ticket for going through a light, data is captured. Every time you actually get on a bus, every time you fill up your car, data is captured, it's recorded, it's increasingly analyzed, and it begins to float its way up into the cloud. But how much information is that actually? Well, we looked at this a couple of months ago, and I wanted to kind of give us an idea of the scale of the big data that we keep talking about in technology from a numbers perspective. So, as of the end of 2015, there were 23 billion connected devices. That's IoT, that's smartphones, that's pretty much everything connected. Pretty amazing. There were 2.5 quintillion bytes of data basically produced per day. An unfathomable amount of data. But probably even more impressive, 90% of the data ever captured has been captured in the past 2 years. To give you an idea of the acceleration of data that's actually appearing in the world and the impact that that may actually have on society. As a mapping company, of course, we care a lot about location and how much of that feeds into location. And in our projections, by 2020, there'll be a 50 times, not 50%, a 50 times increase in the amount of available location data that comes from the Internet of Things. And that completely changes a lot of principles like predictability in life. So there's going to be a lot that's going to change based on that. So when you pull the camera back again and kind of look at this from a trend perspective, there's an awful lot going on. There's personalization, there's the interfaces to IoT, there's smart cities, because most cities have a smart city strategy. And so the question is, as a startup or even as a big company, how do you actually address this? Where do you even start with all of these opportunities appearing, all of these horizontal opportunities, all of these vertical markets, and all of these big companies like us starting really to weigh into certain areas with standards? So this is really where I wanted to focus today. And as a large company, about $1 billion company, there's actually 3 different areas of trending opportunity that we see. And certainly from a location perspective, and I think from even a wider perspective, these 3 areas kind of capture the major parts of the opportunity that we see. So the first one of these is cities and people. So this is really responding to the needs of the urbanizing populace in terms of platforms and in terms of the human opportunities for day-to-day life. The second one of these is supporting machines. So these are essentially the platforms and the elements underneath that, the new service platforms that will really enable autonomy and personalization. And the third one of these is motion. It's essentially movement. It's the ability to move around this world independently and actually save all the time you possibly can and have the best life experience with quality borne in mind by the system. So these are really the 3 large buckets of trending opportunity that we see. So let's dive into these individually. So cities and people. This is really about the fabric of the smart city, again reflecting this idea of urbanization. And we talked about crowdsourced sensors. Everything is connected, everything is producing data, which is really exciting. But what does that actually mean commercially? Well, one of the things that we think location is going to bring attached to that is the idea of universal tracking. Universal tracking of devices means universal rentability. So potentially, almost anything could be rented, meaning you don't necessarily have to buy it. Any high-value item, a watch or a bracelet, or even a smaller item, will be able to be precisely tracked and ultimately rented. And we feel this will actually have an impact on the idea of asset ownership. We already see this occurring in the vehicle market. Secondly, feedback enabling prediction. As a mapping company, we already do this for traffic today. We already have large historical databases of traffic patterns that we can use to actually predict where traffic will and will not occur. We believe the same thing is going to come down really to a consumer level, to a human level, to give you much more insight as to what may happen in your immediate future as a person. And then finally, visualization. Visualization will become much more common. Technologies like augmented reality will mature to allow you to actually even pull up a camera and pull up a smartphone and start to select the world around you, and to explore the world around you, blending together the physical and the digital in a very, very seamless way. So the first area of opportunity we see for startups and for growth and for market maturity is in this area of cities and people. The second area, supporting machines. It's interesting. You can go to here.com and actually do a search for a great restaurant. You can go to other search engines and search for almost anything, right? It's amazing. Records and books and things like that. But what if I want to search for this? And this is a device, right? It has a unique ID, probably infrared, maybe Bluetooth, it has a UID, maybe it's even Wi-Fi. In the immediate future, you'll be able to search not for digital things, but also for physical things. And companies like here are actually maturing the indoor technologies and the tracking technologies that we need to be able to search for anything we want. Any one of those things that we mentioned that actually has a sensor in it. Asset delivery we see becoming instant. This is already sort of starting to happen, but there's immense pressure in the market to deliver assets at the same speed that you can deliver digital elements. And that ties very quickly and very conveniently into this idea of assets-only transportation. There's a lot of companies like Amazon, one of our partners, who are already starting to do this with drones, and who are starting to really break down barriers in terms of legality and also in terms of technology challenges to enable automated item transportation. Finally, machines maintaining machines. My background is IT, so I hope I'm allowed to say it, but basically we spend an awful lot of time and money maintaining stuff. And so as platforms mature, as technology matures, it's absolutely in our interest to develop systems that enable us to fix other systems, updates, and to take the onus of that maintenance away from us. So as platforms expand, this will become a very important thing. Number 3, movement. The mobility ecosystem, virtual presence. Interestingly, the first thing here is that it isn't about movement, is that it doesn't even have to be you who moves. It can actually just be your presence. And we believe technologies like virtual reality will extend and mature outside of gaming and outside of sort of the demo and gaming level where it is now to become really fundamental sort of life changers. Secondly, electric shared vehicles. We expect this to expand dramatically. If you go to Stuttgart today, it's amazing about it. In Stuttgart, in Germany, about 1 out of 10 cars is an electric vehicle, either short-term rental or an owned electric vehicle. We expect this area to expand dramatically because it's much less expensive. And that ties directly into intermodal transport. Imagine having your guidance, whether it's your phone or your car, notify you that it's about to rain, that the traffic's about to get bad, so you probably want to park and take the train instead. We're right on the cusp of that right now. So intermodal transport is going to be a very important thing for these urban societies. Finally, passive autonomous vehicles usage. Like this fellow on the left, he's not driving, he's watching commercials, right? So one of the transitions that we see occurring is that drivers become information consumers. People start to spend a lot less time actually moving themselves and a lot more time being moved by these systems. So these are the 3 major areas of opportunity that we see. And with that said, I wanted to shift gears a little bit to focus on what it's like to collaborate with companies, to offer perhaps a little bit of insight here. But I wanted to start this by talking about platforms, because this is one of the immense things that we see changing in the next couple of years. We call this the rise of the platform, and we think it's a key part of global market evolution. You know, back in 2007, if you had a product or service, you delivered it. For example, if you, for videos, you go to the video store, pick up a video, take it home, watch it, bring it back 2 days late, pay an exorbitant late fee, pick up the next video. And there were some companies like Netflix, which would actually provide, send you the DVD at home and actually automatically deliver things. One of the big transformations in the past couple of years has been the transition to on-demand services. So now, of course, I can get very fresh content. It was in the cinema only a couple of weeks ago, and I can basically play it whenever I want. I can also customize it, so I can put it in Spanish or in Hungarian or Slovenian, whatever language I'd actually like. The big transformation that we see coming next is what we call the contributory and predictive platform, which is the point at which we as consumers can actually contribute and we can contribute both content and also contribute services. So if you take the example of Netflix, which obviously moved from a DVD to an electronic medium and to an automatic rental medium, the next step there may very well be to actually take in professional curated consumer content, and then also allow consumers to develop services to deliver those videos to new places, whether it's a wall or to a boat or to an airplane or to another area. So the ability to provide content and to provide services for these large company platforms, we think is going to be an enormous point of change. And that's really the basis of this future value realization that we see happening, especially at the big company level. So talking about big companies, we love, as large companies, we love large, deep problems. We love industrial solutions. We love 5-year, 50 million euro, 200-person problems. A good example of that is what we let me go back here. Sorry. A good example of that is our own HD Live map product. This is the next generation map that's used for highly automated driving. And just to give you some basic reference of the scale of this, the normal map that you use on your smartphone or on the web is generally about 3 feet precise. It's about a meter right or wrong. It's about a meter's worth of precision. This map is actually accurate to the centimeter, which is of course what you need if you have a self-driving car, right? And not just static data, this is also dynamic data. It incorporates real-time traffic, it incorporates alerts for potholes and lights and weather and all sorts of other dynamic data. So this is the scale of problem that we like to solve, and we already have millions of kilometers of this actually produced. So how do you work with a company that's actually producing and solving problems at that scale? I think there's 5 key points, and I wanted to touch on these today. The first one, and I think the first priority from a startup perspective is understand change better than anybody else in the market. Understand what's happening and what's going on. You know, change is a fundamentally important thing. Even for big companies, we change the map daily. Our map changes almost 3 million times per day, just to give you an idea. But as a startup, if you can identify the problems before they actually occur and build partnerships based on your ability to solve those problems, then you can really win, providing market value at concrete opportunities and hopefully also bringing customers to the table. So first off, understanding market change. Secondly, very fundamentally, understanding the technology stacks that are already present in the market and how those technology stacks work. Which companies are strong in which areas, and which companies are weak in which areas, kind of like a SWOT, but really at an industry level. And then understanding the technology blockers to moving forward, especially for accelerated growth. And that's an important term for big companies, right? Accelerated growth. We like to talk about that with our shareholders. So the second point is really providing solutions to stack-level problems. Excuse me, the second is actually understanding the current technology stacks. The third is providing solutions to stack-level problems. You know, as startups, one of the things that we love to talk about is this idea of disruption. It's kind of a buzzword, right? Probably a bit overused. Disruption is not our favorite word as a big company because, quite sensibly, we're often the ones being disrupted, right? So it's important to frame that the right way. And when you talk to big companies, focus on the commercial value of what it is you're bringing and how it actually adds to their top line and also to their bottom line. It's also important that when you talk with big companies, you sell the entire value framework, not just the use case. You know, the field of especially of some parts of technology, especially in the graphics and augmented reality area, is littered with companies that just developed a single use case. So focus on providing a graph-level solution or a true framework solution for larger companies and present that along with customers. Fourth, understand future market revenue drivers. One of the best drivers of equity and partnership for smaller companies is fear around future revenue and being able to shore up future revenue. So strategically, if you can explore corner areas of the market that have intense needs for user interaction and intense needs for research, then there's a lot of opportunities there. Understanding and providing access to profitable areas and especially showing up with customers is a really good thing. Big companies don't want to purchase technologies. They want to partner with and purchase opportunities. And so really, we feel that's a great point of focus. Finally, understanding that B2B is in almost all cases really B2B2C. And sometimes that second B doesn't understand the C all that well. There's a lot of opportunity there. Being able to draw an opportunity for your company from the final solution that's being sold to the consumer all the way back to your offering is a very powerful thing. So there's a timer on this. And then understanding that at the end of the day, increasing life quality for people in this chain is really, really at the heart of your own success. Very often we focus on, you know, pain points and things like that. I like to kind of reverse that and talk about life quality, whether that's life quality for folks in that second B in the company, in the accounting department of that second B, or whether it's the final consumer using a solution. Another way to say that is actually, and this was actually said to me by a very successful startup founder about a decade ago, and I never forgot it. Ensure that your business plan enables you to complete this sentence. We help people buy. That's sometimes hard to say for a big company like us because we're very wide. We've got hundreds of products and very, very deep as well. But for a startup, it's a very, very easy thing to say, and it's a great way to focus. It's also a really great way to kick off an executive summary or an elevator pitch. So with that, let me leave you. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you to everyone at PODIM, and look forward to our discussions.